Perfect, perfect. And we got folks starting to come on in. If you are here for Cal State Northridge or Cal State San Marcos's ranger-led program of Olympic National Park, you are in the right spot. We're going to wait a little bit for other folks to figure out Zoom, and we'll get started in 2 minutes with Ranger Dean.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to join you today. It's rainy and misty up here in Port Angeles, Washington, which is the location of the park headquarters of Olympic National Park. And I'm really grateful to be able to join you today on Zoom and talk to you a little bit about the magic of Olympic National Park.
Perfect. We're super stoked to have you. As we wait 30 more seconds for folks to trickle in, go ahead. If everyone wants to practice with the chat, let us know where you're coming from. See if we have some more Washingtonians, Washingtonans. If it's the same SoCal crew. Nice. We got New York represented. Oklahoma, all right. No West Coasters yet. Washingtonians. Perfect. Thank you, Kathleen, for correcting me. All right. We got a good little amount. So let's go ahead and get started. Hey, everybody. My name is Chris. I work at California State University Northridge Associate Student Outdoor Adventure Program. And this entire summer has been awesome doing these virtual programs where we've had incredible guest speakers like Ranger Dean coming from Olympic National Park. Today, he's curated a 30-minute presentation on Olympic National Park in which we're going to use a PowerPoint to jump around. And then we'll have some time at the end to do a live Q&A too. So before we get into those, the quick Zoom housekeeping stuff. On the bottom of your Zoom, you've got a couple options. The first one is that chat feature, which we're playing with. In that, feel free to ask any like support or IT questions. If you have any specific questions for Ranger Dean, we're going to use the Q&A function over on that same gray ribbon. Please wait on those questions until the end, because Ranger Dean's got a whole bunch of really good information that he's going to share with us throughout his presentation. Finally, if you want to follow up on topics, if you want to check out some of the other things the park has to offer, we'll continue to drop links in the chat right there. And the last one, that last link that we shared, is our live captioning service. We do have ASL interpreter Caitlin here, but also we have a chat transcript if you want to follow along with the text. That is 100% available for you right there. So without further ado, thank you so much, Ranger Dean, for joining us. And we're excited to hear what you have to share about the park.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for bringing me along today. I'm going to start to share my screen here. Let me make sure I've got this going. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dean Butterworth, and I am a park ranger at Olympic National Park in Washington State. And I work for the National Park Service, which is a part of the Department of the Interior and the federal government. And this is our symbol, the arrowhead symbol. It represents all of the resources that the National Park Service was created in 1916 to protect. So you can see the bison there representing the wildlife resources, and the sequoia tree representing the plants and the other floral resources, in the mountains for the scenic and air resources, and the river bend there, or the lake, representing the water resources, and then of course the arrowhead representing the cultural resources and the historic resources that the national parks, of which there are over 400 National Park Service sites. Olympic National Park is known for its beauty and the diversity of the resources that it's protecting, from the glacier-capped mountains that give way to beautiful subalpine meadows filled with wildflowers in the summertime, to forests, temperate old-growth forests and trails leading through those, to coastal stretch over 75 miles of a wilderness coastline on the Pacific Ocean, the longest stretch of undeveloped coastline in the lower United States, in the lower 48 states. a diverse coastline with sandy beaches, rocky points with pebble coves in between. The map of Olympic National Park, if you look at the light green area on the park there, you can see that the park is mostly the mountainous interior of the Olympic Peninsula. And then we have that strip on the coastline. We have 11 major watersheds that radiate out from the interior mountains of the park. And those watersheds are vital waterways for anadromous fish runs that come up. And so the park protects those salmon runs that come up, which were really not thought of when the park was established back in 1938 as being a critical resource. But as salmon populations have declined over the years, that's become a really important resource that the park is protecting. And one of the things that we're grateful that those that came before us have protected before they came here. The park itself, the lands of the peninsula, were the homelands to Native Americans, the indigenous people who lived here before European contact. And today the park maintains relationships with 8 federally recognized tribes that are on the peninsula. The tribes are the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe, which are up here to just to the west of Port Angeles. And then as you go out along the Strait of Juan de Fuca, out on the northwest tip of the Olympic Peninsula, the Makah Indian Reservation. And then as you come down the Pacific coast at the mouth of the Quileute River, we have the Quileute Indian Reservation. And then at the mouth of the Hoh River, we have the Hoh Indian Reservation. And then at the mouth of the Quileute River, we have the Quileute Indian Nation. And then at the mouth of the Skokomish River, we have the Skokomish Indian tribe. And then up at the opening to the Hood Canal, we have the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe. And then to the east of Port Angeles, we have the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. And so those are the Olympic National Park are the native home, the traditional homelands to those people who still live here and reside on the peninsula today. Along the coast, we have the Rocky Intertidal Zone. And again, diversity is really what sets the intertidal zone apart. You can go in low tide and visit those tide pools, and you can see these remarkable displays of all of this life crowding together, fighting for a spot to take a little foothold and make their space and get their little spot that they can make their way in the world in the intertidal zone. It's a pretty tough place to make a living. You have to deal with the tide going in and out, the extreme changes in temperature as the tide and the cold water comes in. And then as it goes out and you get exposed to the air, and in the summertime, the sun and the heat, and all of the predation that goes on. And the sort of king of the tide pool is the sea star. And you can see in this picture the ochre sea star who makes its way here and sort of keeps the tide pool in check. The mussels sort of can go down as far as the sea star can roam, and as far as the sea star can come up and get those mussels, that's as far down as those mussels can go. And then you can see the giant green anemone down there making its way with its tentacles and sort of getting things that float by when the tides are in and making its living that way. Here's another picture of all those algae also making its living in the tide pool. Beautiful places to go and see. And in pre-COVID times, you could even join a ranger out there during the summer for our tide pool walks. if you were up here coming for a visit out to the tide pool. Of course, there's proper tide pool etiquette when you're visiting. We ask you that you were not doing what the ranger is doing right here, which is picking up a tide pool creature, but just touching with 2 fingers and leaving the creatures in place, and observing them in their place and watching them as they are making their living in place right there. One of the things that I get to do, which is a big part of my job and one of my favorite things to do, is I get to take kids out to the park. And this is a bunch of boys and girls clubs with one of my colleagues, a couple of my colleagues. There's Ranger Jared and Ranger Teresa there, and we're taking some kids from the local Boys and Girls Club in our little town of Sequim. And we're out on the beach here at Claylock, which is a big sandy beach. And we're walking down the beach there, and like all good rangers, we're pointing at things. Good rangers always point. We're always pointing at different things. And I'm not exactly sure what we're pointing at here, probably a seal out in the water over there. And we're also probably picking up trash too. You can see they've got some trash bags with them as they're walking down along the beach, which is one of the things that our junior rangers do with us on our Boys and Girls Club programs as well. So coming up those 11 different watersheds we've got going around with us, we have those salmon runs that I was talking about. And an exciting thing to do when the salmon are running is to watch the adult salmon return to spawn in the streams and rivers where they were born. And one place to do that is in the Solduck River. And there's a viewing platform in the Solduck River where you can watch the salmon jump up the salmon cascades. And so you can go out there and you can go to the edge of the river and you can watch those salmon begin to jump up and make their way up the river. And it's a really exciting thing to do. You sit there and you watch, and a lot of the times they jump up there and they start to swim up and they don't make it and they fall back down. And everybody, the people that are on there, you can hear them, sometimes they'll say, oh, they didn't quite make it. And then the next time as they're jumping up there, they might make it. They'll jump up and you'll see them, they'll make it up to the top and everybody will cheer and you'll hear this big, yeah, from the side of the people staying there to watch it. And so in the park, we have 5 different species, all of the Pacific salmon species. So there's 5 different species of salmon, and they all spawn in the different rivers in the park. There are over 70 different salmon runs in the river. So the different rivers have different salmon runs. They're coming in at different times of the year. And so in the lower 48 states, Olympic National Park is really a critical last habitat, important habitat for wild Pacific salmon stocks in the lower 48 states. And our fisheries biologists do an incredible amount of work on habitat restoration and monitoring. One of the biggest salmon habitat restoration efforts ever undertaken in the United States was the removal of 2 hydroelectric dams on the Elwha River, which began in 2011 and was completed in 2014. And that's another area that you can visit if you came to Olympic National Park. Salmon are considered a keystone species in Pacific Northwest ecosystems. Here are some river otters, and they are making a meal of a salmon who had completed its life cycle and had swam up. This is Taft Creek in the Hoh Rainforest. Another thing that Olympic National Park is known for are the last remaining old growth temperate rainforests in the lower 48 states. They are amazing for the amount of biomass. The largest amount of biomass are in temperate rainforests. And the salmon provide a lot of nutrients as they swim up the rivers. Some of the salmon can be 20, 30 pounds, and they spawn and they die and they become food to animals like these river otters. And all of those nutrients that they put on their bodies by eating out in the ocean, those nutrients get recycled back into the ecosystem, into the rainforest, and contribute to that large biomass in the rainforest. So that incredible biomass is added to by those salmon runs. So preserving those last remaining wild salmon runs is a really important part of preserving the diversity of Olympic National Park. And that diversity adds to the beauty of the park and adds to the resiliency of the park. So that diversity is a really important thing. In the Hoh rainforest, don't know what happened there. We'll go backwards. In the Hoh rainforest, we have a couple of really easy trails that you can take. We have the Hall of Mosses Trail, which is really the famous rainforest trail where you can hike among these big leaf maples, and you can see all of the mosses that are draped on those branches and just hanging down off of the trees, and just create that otherworldly sort of view that you can see in there. It's really incredible to see in there, and it's just a little over a mile to walk that trail. You can also begin from the Hoh Visitor Center. You can begin the hike up to Mount Olympus and the glaciers that cap the highest peak in Olympic National Park at just under 8,000 feet, Mount Olympus. The other thing that people go to the Hoh rainforest to see, they go to see the Roosevelt elk. This is the largest of our animals in Olympic National Park. The Roosevelt elk can get up to 800 pounds. And the elk were, back in 1938 when Olympic National Park was created, the elk were one of the only species that was named in the legislation that created Olympic National Park, because the elk were very low in numbers back in the 1930s. And they were concerned that they were going to be hunted to extinction. And so Olympic National Park was set aside to protect the habitat and to protect the elk. In the springtime, when you come, if you are able to come to Olympic National Park, you'll have to be careful for the cow elk and the calves. The cows can become very protective of their calves, and so you want to give them a wide berth. This cow has a collar on because the biotechs were monitoring her. She was becoming a little aggressive to people. So the rangers can spend some time keeping people and cows away. And then in the fall, if you're here at Olympic National Park, you're here during the rut, when the bull elk are competing for a harem of cow elk. And so you can hear them bugle, which is an incredible sound in the forest, and you can watch them sometimes spar with their antlers. Of course, you'll want to give them a wide berth. Here the cow elk is browsing on the understory and keeping some people in the visitor center as they try and let her do her thing. Another really great wildlife sighting in the Hoh is our banana slugs. And I think the banana slug is as much an icon of the rainforest as the Roosevelt elk. The banana slugs are our native slug in the rainforest. And you can see its breathing hole right here. And the slug has an important role in the rainforest ecosystem. It's our recycler. It eats the debris and the detritus on the rainforest floor and recycles those nutrients back into the forest ecosystem so that they can be taken back up again and contribute to that huge biomass that the rainforest is famous for. Another thing that I like about my job is I get to inspire the next generation of scientists and researchers. And so here we are during one of our bio blitzes, when we had scientists who climbed up into the rainforest canopy and took some of that moss growing on the rainforest canopy and brought it down so that we could look at what was some of the insects and invertebrates that were growing in the moss under microscopes, and begin to study them. Oh, here's my junior rangers from the Boys and Girls Clubs again, just to give you an idea of the size of some of those trees growing in the rainforest. This is a big spruce tree in the rainforest, and I really enjoy my my Boys and Girls Club junior rangers there. Biodiversity is really important, and the resiliency of an ecosystem is tied to the diversity. And at Olympic National Park, we were missing a piece of our population, our community. This is a fisher. A fisher is a small cat-sized member of the martin family, and it was lost from the Olympic Peninsula because of trapping and some habitat loss. And in the 2000s, 2008 to 2011, nearly 100 fishers were returned to the ecosystem. They brought fishers from British Columbia and returned them to Olympic National Park as part of a reintroduction program in Washington State. And they are now reestablished in the Olympic Peninsula. And it was successful enough that they are starting to do reintroductions in the Cascades of Washington State as well. When they were released, they had radio collars so we could track them. Those radio collars only worked for a few years. And so after those years were done and those radio collars stopped working, we set up camera traps to track the fishers. And what you see here is one of those camera stations. And instead of a fisher, you see a cougar, another one of our members of our community here in the diversity of life at Olympic National Park. Those camera trap stations, while we were looking for fishers, proved very useful. We saw a lot of other members of the diverse members of our wildlife community here at Olympic National Park. And so provided a lot of useful information, not only about the fishers, which are still here in the park. That little black triangular tube right there that you see had little brushes in there that trapped fur on, from the fisher would run through that tube, and those brushes would capture some of the fur from the animal. And so scientists and researchers could do some DNA testing. And so we know from the DNA that our fishers are reproducing and that we have young and grandchildren from, or grand fishers from the original reintroduced fishers. So it's been a success and they're reproducing. And so that's a good story about the reintroduction of the fishers. In the mountains, we can see the elk here in the lower right-hand corner. They use the forests in the winter time, and then in the mountains, they go up to the mountains in the summer. And they use that resource in the summertime. In the glaciers, we can see and are providing the cold water that the salmon need, and are a result of the tremendous amount of rainfall that falls on the west side of the mountains as those storms come off of the Pacific Ocean. That tremendous amount of rainfall leads to the rainforests, where we get upwards of 120 to 200 inches of rain a year. The side of the park that I live on, which is sort of the eastern side of the park. We are in the rain shadow of the Olympics, and so we only get about 25 inches of rain a year in Port Angeles. And if you go east to the little town of Sequim, they get even less rainfall. They get maybe 20 inches of rain. And that change in precipitation over the mountain range, again, adds to the diversity of the Olympic Peninsula. And that incredible diversity was recognized sort of internationally by the United Nations through designations in 1976 as a biosphere reserve, and again in 1981 as a World Heritage Site. And so Olympic National Park is one of very few areas that has those designations. The mountains, those glaciers in Olympic National Park, we're concerned about the glaciers. In 1982, in a glacier inventory, we had 266 glaciers in Olympic National Park. That inventory was repeated in 2009, and we have 184 glaciers in Olympic National Park. And so those are some worrying trends that we have here in Olympic National Park. Another threat to sort of the diversity of Olympic National Park is the introduction of non-native animals. And one of the biggest and most impressive and iconic animals is the mountain goats. Mountain goats were not native to the Olympic Mountains. They were introduced in the 1920s before Olympic became a national park. They were introduced for hunting opportunities. And the national park is currently in an effort to remove these goats. This is the final year that we're going to be trying to live capture the goats and move them to the Cascade Mountain Range where they're native. And then later this fall, we're going to begin a process of lethal removal of the mountain goats, which makes people sad, I think rightfully so, because they're beautiful animals. But to protect the diversity of the park's ecosystems, I think it's a necessary step that the park has done a lot of study to consider and to protect the diversity of the park's ecosystems. One of the other residents of the mountain ecosystem that I want to wrap up with right here is the Olympic marmot. There are marmot species in North America, but the Olympic marmot is a marmot that is only found in the Olympic Mountains on the Olympic Peninsula. It is considered an endemic species. And the marmot is here on the Olympic Peninsula, nowhere else in the world. It lives up in the subalpine meadows. And we noticed in the early 2000s that the marmot numbers were declining. And we didn't have the staff in order to study this on our own. And so we reached out to the public and to volunteers to join us and to become a part of a citizen science crew to monitor the marmots. And so for many summers, we had crews of citizen scientists who came to the park, who underwent a day of study and training, and then went out on backpacking trips into the wilderness and went to different areas that they were assigned to study and see if there were still marmots in these areas. And they've been extremely useful and helpful in telling us whether or not there were still marmots in these areas. And the information that they've provided have allowed us to monitor the status of the marmots. And right now, the marmot numbers are no longer declining. They are stable. They are Also, we're starting to notice them. They are starting to go back to a few areas where they were, where they had been absent from. And so that is a positive outcome of that. So I just want to leave you with the idea that Olympic is a place of wonder. It is a place of beauty. It's a place where we can come and learn about the wonderful biodiversity of life. It's a place to inspire future generations and our future scientists. And with that, I would encourage you to continue to seek out places that rejuvenate and inspire you, and to continue to support your national parks, and continue to support diversity in all of its forms. So thank you so much.
That was awesome, Ranger Dean.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for
I'm going to
sharing.
stop sharing my screen, I think. Here you go.
Perfect, perfect. Do you have 4 minutes for us to
Yeah,
ask
I
you
sure
some
do.
fire questions? Perfect. So if everyone wants to pop open that Q&A box, feel free to type in your question there, and then I can read some off to you, Ranger Dean. Maybe starting, this is a common one, but what's accessibility to the park like today?
Great. So it's probably easiest for me to tell you what's not open than what is closed. And so the park has been working with local county health officers and with our tribal governments. And so the tribes, the Makah Reservation and the Quileute Reservation are closed to all visitation. And so the park has kept the areas of the park next to those reservations closed. So Second Beach is closed, and Shai Shai Beach on the Pacific coast are closed because those are right next to the reservation. For the park, most of the park areas are open. Our visitor centers, the interiors of our visitor centers are still closed, but we're helping visitors outside on the porches of the visitor center. Most of our lodging facilities are open, and most of our campgrounds are open with the exception of the Solduck campground. And yeah, there's some modifications to operations due to COVID concerns, but most things are operating.
Got it. Thank you. This one comes up a bunch too. What's your favorite time to visit the park?
So, you know, we're in the Pacific Northwest. We do get a lot of rain, but we do have a distinct rainy season and a distinct dry season. It's drier in July and August. It's rainier the rest of the year. Having said that, September, after Labor Day, the crowds go down. The weather can still be really nice. Typically, all of the facilities are open, and that tends to be a really great time of the year to visit.
Perfect. I think this is a cool question. You kept calling it a rainforest, but it's not tropical. What classifies something as a rainforest?
So we have a temperate rainforest, which is not a tropical rainforest. And so a rainforest is characterized by the amount of rain it receives. We receive between 120 and 200 inches of rain a year. And I think that 120-inch mark is sort of what makes it a rainforest. There's some characteristics that make it a rainforest. We have large standing snags. We have colonnades and nurse logs. Colonnades are areas where the trunks are raised up off of the ground. So trees get started along nurse logs in a rainforest. So a nurse log is a tree, an adult tree that falls down on the ground and sort of is lying down on the ground. And then all the seedlings get started along the nurse log. And then they send their roots down along the trunk. And then that trunk sort of disintegrates. And so the adult trees then are sort of standing up with their roots acting like legs down. And it looks like a colonnade. Sometimes you'll call them buttresses. You'll get some references to cathedral type architecture in the rainforest.
That's awesome.
Species, the dominant tree species in the rainforest is the Sitka spruce.
How old can some of those trees get to be?
Several hundred years old, 200 feet, 200 plus feet tall. And then the temperate rainforest is known for its biomass, where the tropical rainforest is known for its biodiversity. So the biomass is sort of just, if you were to sort of try to weigh the mass of all of the living things in the rainforest, the mass is the amount of living stuff is huge because of the growth rate of the rainforest. And temperate just means that it doesn't get really, really cold in the rainforest. It doesn't get really, really hot in the rainforest. The temperature, it doesn't swing, the temperatures don't swing wildly from one season to the next.
Got it. If we have time for one more, Keegan has been super pumped on asking, how did you become a ranger? What kind of schooling did you do, or what was your journey?
So my ranger career started as a volunteer, actually, at the Golden Gate National Recreation Area in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so I started off volunteering at the Point Bonita Lighthouse. I have a bachelor's degree from the College of the Holy Cross. I also was in the ROTC program at Holy Cross and was in the Navy for 4 years. So my path is pretty typical in that I did some volunteering before working as a seasonal ranger for several years before I got my permanent job. I think most people do it that way. They work a little volunteer or an internship and while they're in college, and then they do some seasonal jobs, and then they try and get a permanent job.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that component along with the park. I appreciate the openness. Well, I think I've already kept you way longer than I promised. So thank you for hanging out afterwards.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If people have additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and keep spamming that nps.gov website where you can follow up on topics that you're interested about. And I put our CSUN Outdoor Adventures email address. Feel free to send questions to us, and we can play the middleman between with Ranger Dean.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everyone for spending their long lunch break with us and exploring Olympic virtually. And then thank you so much, Ranger Dean, for putting that presentation together and sharing all that information. We appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I had a great time.
Good.
Thanks, Ranger Kaya, for all of those links that she dropped in the chat there. I think she just shared her email address, which in the chat as well. So
perfect. Go straight to the source for that info.
Yeah.
Well, there's all those links one more time. Ranger Kaya's email in there. We look forward to seeing everyone on Monday. I think we're doing Wonders of the World. Monday at 6 o'clock, same Zoom link. We'll go, we'll check out some new stuff. Thank you all one more time. Thanks, Dean.
Bye.
Have a good one all.